Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So again, we're in the 6th chapter. Does anyone remember what verse we're on? I think it's 23 or 24.
15, I think.
It's 15.
15. Oh, okay. Deepa, will you help us out?
Yes, of course. Yunjanevam sadatmanam yogi niyatamanasa shantim nirvana parmamam matsamstha madhi gacchati. Thus, always keeping the mind balanced, the yogi, with his mind controlled, attains the peace abiding in me, which culminates in total liberation, nirvana or moksha.
Yes. So what we've learned up to this point is we've had some instruction on posture, sitting on a seat where he said a piece of cloth, some kusa grass covered with a skin. The idea is if you're sitting on the floor, you want your hips a little higher than your knees. And we talked about how for Westerners, that's not necessary. Sitting in a chair with your back straight is perfectly fine. You want to be solitary, it says, meaning you set aside some time. You deal with distractions. Turn your telephone off. If you have a meditation room, that's best. If not, a place in your house where you meditate every day. And then he says, gazing at the tip of the nose. This is not run around cross-eyed. It means bringing the mind to a single point of attention. And in meditation, there are many, many different tools we can use to serve as a point of attention. Some people use the breath. You can just be aware of the incoming and the outgoing breath. Some people will count the breath, count up to 10, drop it, count up to 10 again, let go. Another very powerful technique is what we call japa, the silent repetition of a sacred word or phrase called a mantra. When you're in meditation, this is not about trying to see visions or trying to get messages or getting answers. It's not about doing affirmations. It's a not do. As I frequently say, just don't do something, sit there. And the great metaphor, it's as if you were sitting on the bank of a river, and the river is the flow of the thoughts of the mind. We don't judge them, we just let them go by, be they vicious or virtuous, be they good or bad, trivial or important. And going back to that image of like the tip of the nose, as thoughts and feelings arise, we don't suppress them, but we don't get caught up in the theme of our thinking. We bring the mind back to its single point. Last week, we talked about the distinction between Monoliya and Manonasha. Monoliya is when the mind moves towards unconsciousness, when you get sleepy. So if you're in meditation and everything gets thick and your mind starts to wander and your head nods, that's not meditation. The mind at meditation is silent, but vigilant and alert. Then, one of the things that's going to happen, you'll go through stages. The first stage I call entertainment. Oh, look at me, I'm meditating. Ooh, maybe I need to get some yoga pants to meditate in. Oh, I wonder if I should get a new zafu or something like that. You know, I can't wait to tell my cousin Susie that I'm meditating now. The kind of excitement and entertainment stuff. And that stuff will go away. Then the next layer of the mind that we'll face is what I call shopping lists. Did I remember to turn the stove off? What am I going to do about that project at work? Oh, I still have to do that paper for school. Oh, I really feel bad that, I said that thing to my boyfriend, etc. All these little trivial thoughts come up, and we don't judge them. We don't get caught up in them. They arise, and we let them go. Underneath that frequently is sleepiness. Now, here's some techniques. If you tend to get sleepy, meditate with your eyes open. Really work on your posture. If you're using a mantra, you can say your mantra very loudly in your mind. And underneath that is some stillness, some quietude. Oh, we're not done. Then starts what I call the unloading of the unconscious. There's a wonderful term for these materials in the unconscious, the hridaya granthi, the knots of the heart. They're oftentimes called kleshas. That's the term that's normally used in the hatha yoga tradition. These traumas or sadness or things like that. Sometimes we use the word dosha, which means defect, usually in terms of like a disease. Sometimes they're called mullam, dirt. Doesn't matter what word you use, it's the stuff, our issues. They arise out of the unconscious. Now, we don't need to go causation hunting. oh, this reminds me when I got yelled at as a kid, or some trauma or something like that. Just feel the feeling. Just don't do something. Sit there. Be curious. Don't try to get away from them. If you're sad, weep. Just keep breathing. Keep chanting your mantra. And these knots of the heart come up into our field of awareness. We just hold them non-violently in awareness. And then they start to unravel and dissipate. So that's the preparation of where we've gotten to. Would you read the English of this verse again now, please, Deepa?
Sure.
I forgot. I'm old.
I think. Was it me?
It was 15, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thus, always keeping the mind balanced, the yogi, with his mind controlled, attains the peace abiding in me, which culminates in total liberation, nirvana or moksha.
Yes. So keeping the mind balanced. After a while, we start to have this equality of vision, this equanimity towards our internal experience. And the mind starts to slow down. We begin to see the beginning, the continuation of a thought, and the end of a thought. We start to have space between our thoughts. And then this deep abiding peace, which is my self-nature, begins to become present. And here the scripture uses the word nirvana, which is a word you usually hear in the Buddhists. Many Buddhists think of nirvana as a place you go to or something like that. That's not what it means. Nirvana literally means blown out. And the metaphor is this. In India, we would think of a lamp, an oil lamp with a little wick and a flame. Modern times, think of a candle with a flame. Now, the flame is not a solid thing. You can't grab the flame. The flame, in fact, is a dynamic event. It's the constant oxidization of gases. That's the great metaphor for my mind, with its striving, with its struggling. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, gimme, 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 gimme. Oh, I need all that stuff. Wonderful words for it all. Vancha, wanting. Spriha, longing. Krishna, thirsting. Of course, the most famous, kama, craving. So as the mind settles down, I'm not getting the stuff I want in the world. I'm letting go of the wanting itself. And when all that struggle has ceased, it's blown out. Now, when the mind stops, even if it's just momentarily, the world stops. The mind is the world, and the world is the mind. Also, my sense of individuality momentarily stops. Something there is that remains, this ground of being, this Brahman that we were talking about before class. This is Krishna. This is what Krishna means. When he talks about himself, he means the self in you and me. Christianity, Jesus called it the peace that passeth all understanding. That's what he meant when he said, my kingdom is not of this world. It doesn't mean that you're going to go someplace far away. It means where I'm at peace is independent of the circumstances of the world. This is moksha, liberation. This is nirvana, the state where that neurotic, self-obsessed struggler is blown out. Any thoughts or questions on this? It's a beautiful, beautiful image. Next verse.
नात्यश्नतस्तु योगोऽस्ति न चैकान्तमनश्नतः न चापि स्वप्नशीलस्य जाग्रतो नैव चार्जुन. Verily, yoga is not possible for him who eats too much, nor for him who does not eat at all, nor for him who sleeps too much, nor for him who is always awake, O Arjuna.
So here, Krishna is saying to do what the Buddhists call the middle path. Too frequently, people unconsciously get into the mind state of what I call flesh hating. I've got nasty old matter and I've got to beat it up to get the spirit out. Or I'm just going to follow all my indulgent passions. I'm going to give in to my inner 2-year-old and eat everything and get everything, blah, 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 blah. Neither way works. So what yoga says is take this moderate, this middle path. You need sleep. There's no virtue in trying to exist on 4 hours sleep a night. The neuroscientists say basically we all need somewhere between 7, 8 hours of sleep, some 9 hours. Is that right, Mark? You're the doc.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah. Eat moderately. Eat balanced food. Eat pure food. Eat well. Don't overeat. Don't starve yourself. And it's with anything else in life. In your relationship, should you make love with your spouse? Yes. But if you're doing it 16 times a day, probably there's something going on there. So the idea here is work for balance. And it's in all sorts of things. You have your work life. You have a social life. You have time for your meditation, time for your spiritual reading, downtime. Make a balanced life a lifestyle priority. Don't get caught up in extremes. Any thoughts on this? Now, we might as well deal with one of the things that is common for all of us. We usually have it either, if not something we've dealt with ourselves, but we have someone that we know. And that's the whole phenomenon of addiction. Yoga says everybody to some degree has an addictive relationship with the world. That's part of the problem. But if there's some particular activity that's getting in the way of your life, and moderation doesn't work, you might need to let go of it. You might need to let go. If you engage in the activity, and when you do it, you are unable to do so moderately, you probably have an addictive relationship with it, and you may need to give it up. Any thoughts on this? Only you can figure that out for yourself. Only you can figure that out for yourself. All right, next verse.
Yuktahara viharasya yuktacheshtasya karmasu yuktaswapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. Yoga becomes the destroyer of pain for him who is moderate in eating and recreation, who is moderate in his exertion during his actions, who is moderate in sleep and wakefulness.
So yoga comes from the root yuj, which means to join. So what is it that we're endeavoring to do? Being able to be at peace, yoking our minds to the infinite. So you want to live a kind of life where your life is not problematic. So, for example, is there any virtue in poverty? Actually, no. Nobody thinks about money more than a poor person who doesn't know where their next meal is going to come from or has fear of being unhoused. That's different than living a simple life. The more stuff you have, the more you have to deal with it, pay for it, keep it in order, etc., etc., etc. So many people on the spiritual path find that life is easier when they live a more simple life. It's not rooted in trying to keep up with other people. This doesn't mean that we don't have our goals. Of course we have our goals. But unnecessary consumption in and of itself becomes problematic. So the yogi finds that her life is easier if she takes on a life of simplicity. This is not a life of penury. This is not poverty. Let me see if I can give you an example. So when I was in the Bombay ashram in 1993, we ate well. Essentially every meal there was sabji, vegetables, dal, lentils, rice, piece of bread, chapati, was not highly spiced. But it was pretty much the same every meal. Very soon, we quit eating for, oh, this is such fabulous food, I want another helping. And you ate for sustenance, which is how we're designed to live. Your body begins to right itself. Every once in a while, if you want a special meal, great. Be moderate even about moderation. But things in life begin to take their proper balance when we're not trying to wring our happiness out of the world. The world is not bad. In the end, the world is God. But my problem is when I think the root of my happiness, my peace of mind, my serenity is in pleasure seeking. That tends to be a way of living that builds again what I had called this addictive relationship with the world. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
This is verse 18. Yada vinayitam chitta chittam atmanyevavatisthate nispriha sarvakamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. When the perfectly controlled mind rests in the self only, free from longing for all, uh, free from longing for all objects of desire, then it is said he is united or yukta.
Yes. Nishpriha. Without longing. Without longing. So, let's review what I call the pleasure principle. I think the psychologists call it, use that term for something else. So, what does it feel like to want something you don't have? Yoga says fundamentally there's no other suffering than wanting something you don't have. Or the flip side, I want to get rid of something I don't like. Or what I call the neurotic form, I have what I want, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. So what do I do? What does the ordinary person do? Well, first of all, we all know that we all like different things. So I determine what is dear to me. The technical word is priya, dear. So we use the little prayer stone here as the widget, the object that I've decided that's what's going to make me happy. It's a person. It's a place. It's a condition. It's a situation. Something out there. The next step is I get proximate to that person, place, thing, or condition. I go out on a date with it. I go to Target and I buy it. I invest in Bitcoin to make the money for it. Whatever it is that I've decided I need to do, going from point A to point B, that the technical word for that is moda. Then when desire and the object of desire become one, oh yeah, pramoda. the point of pleasure. I got what I wanted. And the ordinary person in my spiritual ignorance, I think the widget is where the happiness is. And that makes me want to repeat the activity. And I develop this addictive relationship. I want to do it over and over again. What yoga says, actually, when desire and object of desire become one, for a moment, my mind has been freed from the longing for the desire. It is nishpriha. It is without longing. What? I got it. And I don't realize, in fact, that's a taste of my own self-nature. Meditation is our attempt to bring that mind into the state of being without longing, coming home, not struggling, independent of the objects of the world. This breaks my addictive relationship to them. Nothing wrong with the world. But if I think that's the only way I'm ever going to be happy, it's serious business. If, on the other hand, my mind can come home and I can have what we call Atmaramana, I can revel in my own self-nature, independent of the world, then I'm a free person. So listen carefully. Many people keep wanting, I want to meditate, I want to have a spiritual experience, and they meditate and they meditate and they meditate. But what they don't do is clearly examine this addictive relationship with the world. And they hang on to their attachments. They hang on to their cravings. And then they wonder why they never get anywhere spiritually. Because it's twofold. We have to be able to let go of the world and allow the mind to come home, to be satisfied in the self, by itself. Now, the ruthless rule of the mind is the mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. That's why, for example, if someone is a meth addict, it's so euphoric, so hard to break that addiction because the mind keeps going there, it keeps returning to it. Thank God, God or yourself is the most beloved, or we'd all be screwed. So even if just for a moment, you get a taste of that peace. Might even be because you're in the presence of a great guru. Might be because you're on a meditation retreat. Might be because of the profundity of being in nature. Could be because of a great shock. But if your mind tastes it even once, because it's clean, because it's pure, you're going to want to get back there. And then that ruthless rule of the mind, wanting to return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy, that then becomes what we call your mumukshutva, your burning desire for liberation. The Lord's gotcha is going to pull you out. The very desiring and passion that used to drive us into the world now starts to drive us home. We start to read spiritual books. We go to classes. We meditate. Maybe do some yoga. Come to satsang, come to a Gita class. We get these little moments. This is not the Lord herself. This is the glories. But they, what we need along the way. In the end, it's nothing but a taste of my own self nature. The world isn't good. The world isn't bad. The names and forms of the world are shunyata, void, empty. I just use them to get a taste of myself. So, as well as meditating, this is the assignment. Take on what we call sakshibhava, the attitude or the viewpoint of the witness. Watch your mind. Notice what happens when your mind extroverts. I want, I want, I want, I want. How's that working out for you? And the more I want it, and the further away the object of desire is, the more painful it is. Knock yourself out. Yeah. And then notice when you satisfy a desire, what it does to my mind is the same. I am fooled by the diversity of sensory experience. But happiness, joy, fulfillment, satisfaction tastes the same. Nishpriha. It is the mind freed from longing. So in meditation, letting go of all our strivings, letting all our strivings cease. Drink deep of that peace that passes all understanding. Any questions about this? All right, next verse.
Yatha deepo nivatastho nirvate sopama smrita yogino yatta chittasya yunjato yogamatmanah. As a lamp placed in a windless place does not flicker, is a simile used to describe the yogi of controlled mind, practicing yoga of the self or absorbed in the yoga of the self.
Yes. So we want we use this image of the flame of the candle or the flame of the lamp. Can you get your mind to be as still as the flame of a candle in a windless room? Can you stop Now, let's not romanticize this. If in a 20 or 30 minute meditation period, you have a minute or two during that 30-minute period, maybe in only 10 or 15-second intervals of absolute quiescence, you're doing really well. And it's a practice. Again, one of my favorite metaphors is the traffic going up and down Grand Avenue right outside my apartment here. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the noise of the traffic is constant. It gets louder, it gets softer, you hear a truck go by, you hear a motorcycle go by, but it never quietens down. That's like our minds for most of us as beginners. The flow of thought and feeling and memory and impression is constant. But you don't grip the mind into silence. What you do is take your energy out of it. The way to quieten the mind is to get out of the mind. Stay in the position of the witness. Just watch it. Keep bringing your mind back to your point of attention, the breath, or your mantra, your sacred word. And then after a while, the frequency and volume of thought diminishes. So right now it's 7:15. As I listen to the traffic, in between the lights, there's some real silence. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, totally silent. Then maybe out of the silence comes one car, and then it ends. So also in meditation, you'll find that you'll be able to watch the beginning and the end of a thought. A thought arises out of silence, it exists, and it ends. Keep trying to lengthen those spaces between your thoughts. Frequently, for beginners, where it is most noticeable is that interval between the inhale and the exhale. Or the opposite, between the exhale and the inhale. And as we get the thinning of the mind, the world and all its problems start to drop away. The effects of meditation are subtle and they're cumulative. Don't be too worried about, oh, today I had a good meditation, or, oh, yesterday was good and today sucked. Don't worry about that, because these layers of material keep coming up out of the unconscious. Don't judge your period of meditation. Just do it. I would recommend, if you can do 20 minutes twice a day, that's wonderful. If you can do 30 or 40, even better. An hour is more than enough. But if 20 minutes is difficult, do 15. If you can't do 15, do 10. If you can't do 10, do 5. Anybody can sit still for 5 minutes. If you're at that particular level of your practice, do it more frequently during the day. Stop at work and maybe just for some moments. Om Shiva. And build up to a minimum of 20 minutes. For most of us, it takes that long for the mind to settle down. Be patient with yourself. Don't get frustrated. And how do I judge the efficacy of my meditation? When I look back over 6 weeks, 6 months, a year, am I generally less reactive? Am I worrying less? Am I more joyful? Am I happier in my life? The effects of meditation are subtle and cumulative, and they begin to become manifest over a significant time period. Any thoughts on this? Now, so let's say you go to the gym and you work out. And all of a sudden, on this coming Saturday, you've got a date with someone. Oh my God, I'm in such bad shape. I'm overweight and I haven't been to the gym in 3 weeks. I'll work out for 4 hours and that'll give me a toned bod for my date. Does that work? How do you get a healthy physique? You work out on a regular basis. Meditation in that way is very similar. This is not crisis management. You have to make it a regular practice, like taking a shower or brushing your teeth or doing the dishes, for those of you who do your dishes regularly. Do it every day. And if you skip a day, no blame. Just start. Oh, I forgot I didn't meditate this morning. Well, you can meditate midday. You can meditate in the afternoon. It's best if you do it at the same time every day because you build a habit. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that at the beginning, I just couldn't do it by myself. I really needed the support of the group. And I'm talking about building it up for like 3 years. And then the 4th year, I finally was able to sit by myself. So yeah. And I still get frustrated when my meditation is dry. Yeah, and I still have fights with myself when I feel so restless. And lately I've been like really having body aches and like really some resistance there. And then I just want to dedicate that to the Lord as well. So I don't know. I just want to say, I thought that after meditating now, it's my 8th year, it will get easier. And like you were saying, but it hasn't gotten to that point.
So Celie, what happens is, again, you've heard the metaphor in so many traditions of peeling the onion. the layers of the onion.
Yeah.
So you get to one level of equanimity, and then you know, kind of you feel like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. And then from the inside, new material comes up. And then that's what makes me restless. Is there are new issues coming up. And we don't get to choose how much crap is in there. You know, what's in there is what's in there, you know?
Yeah.
Family of origin, yoga would even say from prior lives. So you just keep shoveling the shit.
That's a great description. All right, thank you.
And just keep at it. Just keep at it. Now, towards the end of the chapter, Arjuna is gonna say to Krishna, "Oh, it's like trying to control the wind." And Lord Krishna will say, "You're right. It is difficult and seems impossible, but it is possible through practice." So what happens is people get discouraged and they give up. So I tell you, actually, the most difficult, I love the word you use, dry. Those are the most valuable meditations, because that means our shoveling is working. We're finding stuff to bring up.
Well, that's great news and big hope. Thank you.
Well, let's look to the facts. So you had this desire to do ACA work this past year,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now, 4 years ago, did you have a desire to do it?
Not at all. I didn't even know it existed.
And that stuff was still down there.
Yeah.
And through meditation, through your spiritual practices, you unlocked a whole nother layer of your unconscious.
Oh,
You see that?
yeah.
Now, you didn't just start being an adult child of an alcoholic. No, you just hadn't dealt with that stuff yet. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. I remember calling you like a month later and then I said, I didn't sign up for this. This is too painful. And you said, you're not getting it. Or you said you already have it. You're just releasing it.
Yes, it's all in there. And it's always humbling to find out what a basket case we really are.
Totally.
But you get some space away from it. Now, I'm just being intuitive. My sense is it's not afflicting you right now like it did, say, 6 months ago.
That's true. I don't get too upset too long. Yeah. But I do.
So the metaphor that I like to use, meditation is not like putting lotion on dry skin or putting a salve on something. It's more like lancing a boil. And in other scriptures, we get a very definite term called kashaya. And it means the vomiting up of the unconscious tendencies. And that's what you've been doing. But you're right on schedule. Everybody has to go through it. The issues may be a little bit different, but the process is the same. And we can look at somebody else and say, oh, golly, they seem to be getting it so quickly and blah, 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 blah. Why is it taking so long for me? Well, who knows? Maybe they were slow in their last life. We don't get to choose. The material is there, and our job, bring it up, let it go.
Thank you. Too.
Nina, how are you doing with this? Is it making sense to you?
Yeah, it's making sense. I did have a question though. You mentioned earlier the inner child, and I'm just wondering how meditation can kind of help heal the inner child aside from letting go of trauma and things like that.
It is incredibly powerful. I would say that therapy is just a more gross, meaning it's a lower vibration of meditation. Meditation is far subtler for doing this. And I said our inner 2-year-old, I didn't mean the inner child. That's different kind of work. When I talk about my inner 2-year-old, that's the indulgent part of me. I want ice cream now, and no, I don't want to go to bed. You know that part inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the same. That's just the little whiny 2-year-old inside, and that we have to make peace with and not let it tyrannize us. But if you're doing inner child work, Bradshaw stuff, you know, the guru is a principle. The external teacher is a temporary psychological device. It's very important, very valuable, but it's temporary. The real guru is within you. And trust your intuition. You will be led to do the work you need to do. Does that make sense, Nina?
Yes, thank you for clarifying. Yes.
Yeah. And the Bradshaw kind of stuff where you deal with your inner child and stuff like that, that's just a frame. That's just a paradigm. You don't need to use that frame. You can sit in meditation. You don't have to label it. Just let the material arise. They weren't doing inner child work 1,000 years ago when people were still meditating. But I'm not saying that it's not valuable. How do I know if I need to do it? If you're intuitively led to it. That's how you know.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Is that useful?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Deepa, let's do 1 or 2 more, I think.
So Jim, actually, it's almost 7:30, and the next 4 verses are all together. Do you want me to go for the first?
Go for it.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Do you want me to read all 4 together or just
All
one?
4 together.
Okay. Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyanatmani tushyati sukhamatyantikam yakta dabuddhigraya matindriyam veti yatra na chaivayam sthitaschalati tatvatah yam labdhva chaparam labham manyate nadikam tatah yasmin ninstho na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate tama vidyada dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samyitam sa nishchayena yoktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa. The English for the 4 verses is: when the mind, restrained by the practice of yoga, attains quietude, and when seeing the self by the self, he is satisfied in his own self. When he, the yogi, feels that infinite bliss, which can be grasped by the pure intellect and which transcends the senses, wherein established he never moves from the reality, which having obtained, he thinks there is no other gain superior to it, wherein established, he is not moved even by heavy sorrow.
Okay, I changed my mind. We'll do that one, those four again next week because they're very, very deep.
Okay.
They're very, very deep.
I didn't even read the fourth one yet, so we'll do it again next time.
Okay, so we have a few minutes for more questions before we sit in meditation. Any other questions? Again, I'll share with you what my teacher always used to say. He would say, I don't want any stupid questions. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. So ask your question, no matter how trivial or off topic you may think it is.
Okay, here goes. So we meditate for about, I don't know, like 20 minutes maybe. So I set my timer for 45 minutes at nighttime, but I used to do it later. So now I don't know, it's about math. So now I'm just doing it continuously. And do you think that kind of interruption, just like saying, thank you, Jim, thank you, Vipa, and turning off and continue the meditation is another, you know, like stretch, or should I count it at the same? Like, I mean, it's silly what I'm asking, but I don't know. I just
do whatever
sometimes
you want. 20 minutes for you is maybe a short meditation.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with logging off and meditating for 45 minutes.
Even with that, with interruptions, like saying goodnight and shutting up down, or that would.
You know, if you can drop in and out of meditation quickly, then it's not problematic. When you're a facile meditator, you can drop in and out very easily.
Okay.
It's up to you. Trust your intuition.
Okay, thank you.
I have absolute faith in your higher power.
I'll borrow your faith.
Okay. You can borrow my higher power too. She's very smart.
Will do.
All right. Anybody else have a question?
Hey, Jim, this is Katie. I have a question.
Hi, Katie.
Hey. I've been doing some breathing work and somatic breathing work, and I'm curious if you have any guidance in terms of focusing attention on different parts of the body during meditation.
Excellent question. I loved doing that. I did a whole rebirthing thing, and they don't call it that anymore. They call it breath work now. But what I like about it, as opposed to talk therapy, is it circumvents the rational mind. So it's excellent stuff. So I personally think breath work is great. Many people will intuitively find breath work happening in meditation. The technical term for these things are called kriyas, which are like cleansings that happen. So my suggestion, Katie, is again, trust your intuition. So if you're sitting doing breath work and you're in meditation and you're feeling like a pain or a sensation in your body, you can focus your attention on that and do the breath work with that. Just don't get caught up in some big long stream of something. But maybe there's something very therapeutic. One of the things that we need to understand is we say mind and body. Well, yoga says actually that's a false paradigm. you have a visible and invisible part of your embodiment. So the body is just a grossified form of the mind. That's why the metaphysicians say change your thinking and your body and behavior will change. People in the 12-step group say, or I guess the behavior modification people, change your behavior and your attitudes will change. Yoga says yes, because the body and the mind are not separate. The mind is a subtle form, the body is a gross form. So if you're intuitively led to do breath work, somatic breath work, focusing on sensations in the body, because all of these kleshas, all of these sanskaras are lodged in the body as well. I know Susali has done it. Deepa, have you done those Goenka Vipassana meditations?
Yes. Yes.
And don't they do a scanning of the body as part of the practice?
Yes. You're supposed to observe subtle sensations on the body that you wouldn't other, like not gross sensations that you directly observe, but stuff like the sensation of air on your skin and yeah, subtle, yes, body scans basically.
And why do they tell you to do that?
It's to observe how the mind reacts to such stimulus, and then be able to watch it react and then tell it that this too shall pass. So you say anicca, this is ephemeral, and that's to cultivate discipline with any other bigger life events where
And the other part of it, though, I think Goenka uses the word sankara.
yeah, so sankharas is essentially the closest equivalent I found in Vedanta is vasana. So
Yes.
your vasanas come to the surface and you basically experience anger, lust, jealousy, all of that. And then,
But you will also experience them as a sensation in the body. That's the point.
yes.
See, because they're not separate. So
Yes.
Katie, is this making sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a very valid way to approach it. Now, other people, they're just dealing with just subtle mental and emotional sensations. Their body, they don't lodge a lot of that stuff in their bodies. It's very individual. But if you're being led to do breath work, I highly support it. Now, I even went further. I not only did breath work, but I got Rolfed back in the 70s because I had so much crap stored in my body. That was an experience. Because the body and the mind are not separate. One is a grossified form of the other. That's all it is. Now, if you want to work on stuff that's lodged in the body, the most efficient way to do that is do asana. Do the yoga postures. Is there anybody online who does yoga asana, hatha yoga? Yes, no?
I used to, Jim.
Okay. But that's like rolfing your own body. That's like doing deep tissue work on your own body and nervous system. So again, it just depends on what you're intuitively led to do. So in the 8 limbs of Raja Yoga, start with the yamas and the niyamas, that's moral behavior. The next layer that we deal with, asana. Working on these deeply concretized issues in the physical body. And then what's the next layer after we do asana? Who knows what the next limb of Raja Yoga is?
Pranayama.
Pranayama. What's pranayama? Breath work. There we are. Going back about 2,500 years. So Katie, you're right on course.
Oh, thank you. Super, super helpful.
Now, if you want to know the Indian traditions on those, there are two books I want to recommend. One is called Light on Yoga by BKS Iyengar, Iyengar. And then the sequel to that is Light on Pranayama, also by Iyengar. They're in paperback. You can get them on Amazon. They're excellent, excellent texts on that particular kind of practice if you're led to it. Anybody else have thoughts on that? But if you find a practitioner or a therapist who's doing breath work, knock yourself out. It's great stuff. Great stuff. All right, we've gone far enough. Save your questions for next week.